Hello, this is the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Thank you so much for tuning into this video in which we will look at factorising quadratic trinomials. So we learned in a previous video what makes an expression a quadratic is having these x squared terms. So trinomial, tri means 3, it means it has 3 terms. So each of these here has 1, 2, 3 terms, and it has an x squared term. It's a quadratic trinomial. So this is like our decision tree for which method of factorising you use. So whenever you have a quadratic, always try first to use highest common factor. Always ask yourself, is there a common factor? If yes, use highest common factor. If there's no common factor, we have 2 methods. Difference of 2 squares, we use that when it's a binomial, when there's only 2 terms. We learnt that in a previous video. But for 3 terms, if there's no common factor, you use the sum and product rule. So what's that? Well, let's look at x squared plus 6x plus 8, which is a quadratic trinomial. It's called the sum and product rule because you need to find 2 numbers that multiply to this, to the constant term, and add to the coefficient of x. So what you do is set up 2 brackets, and we'll put an x in each of them. So the 2 numbers that multiply to 8 and add to 6 are 4 and 2. If you didn't know that off the top of your head, just go through factors of 8, see which add up to 6. So this is the answer, because if I expand this using FOIL, I get x squared plus 6x plus 8. 4 times 2 gives me this number here. And when you're expanding insides and outsides, you get 4x plus 2x equals 6x. These 2 numbers always add to the coefficient of x. These 2 numbers always multiply to the constant term. That's why this method works. So x squared minus 8x plus 16. So here again we have quadratic trinomial because there are 3 terms. These terms have no common factor. There's nothing that goes into all 3 terms, so we're going to use the sum and product rule. So we get 2 brackets with an x in each. Now we need to find 2 numbers that multiply to positive 16, and this time they're adding not to 8 but to negative 8. The coefficient of x here is negative 8. So if you don't know those numbers, go through factors of 16. It turns out they are negative 4 and negative 4. So negative 4 plus negative 4 gives negative 8. Negative 4 times negative 4 gives 16. If I expand this using FOIL, I get this. All right, let's try this one. So this is a little harder because the constant term is negative. So we're going to do it the same way. Because this is a quadratic trinomial and there are no common factors, we get our 2 brackets with an x. Now we need to find 2 numbers that multiply to negative 14 and add to negative 5. So because they multiply to a negative, one of these numbers is going to be negative, the other positive. So going through factors of 14, fortunately there aren't many, 7 and 2 will work. So how can I get 7 and 2 to add to negative 5? Well, if the 7's negative and the 2's positive. Negative 7 plus 2 is negative 5. Negative 7 times 2 is negative 14. If I expand this using FOIL, I get this. So what about this one here? Well, this one looks almost the same, except instead of negative 5x, it's positive 5x. So it's actually going to be the same 2 numbers of 7 and 2. But this time, because we want them to add to positive 5, the 7's going to be positive. So changing the sign of this coefficient here just changes the sign of the numbers in the brackets. Okay, what about something like this, 3x squared plus 12x plus 12? Well, this is a quadratic trinomial, but unlike in all of these examples, there is a common factor. There is something that goes into each of the 3 terms, and that's 3. So highest common factor, we write out the front, and we say, what do I times by 3 to get 3x squared? What do I times by 3 to get 12x? What do I times by 3 to get 12? So I've used highest common factor here. Now this in here is a quadratic trinomial, and I can factorize it. So this is factorized, but it's not factorized fully. I can factorize x squared plus 4x plus 4, because I can find 2 numbers that multiply to 4 and add to 4. They're both 2. So it's x plus 2x plus 2. I can actually write it like this. just like I could have written this as x minus 4 all squared. So what about something like this? Well, this is actually not a quadratic because it's got this 3 here. To the power of 3 actually means a cubic, but these three terms have a common factor. So I always start by trying to use common factor. So they each have a common factor of x. So what do I times by x to get x cubed? What do I times by x to get minus 5x squared? What do I times by x to get 6x? So once again, after I've taken out the common factor, I'm left with a quadratic trinomial. There are no common factors here. So I can factorize what's in the brackets. So I'll leave the x alone out the front. So I'll set up my two brackets here and put an x in each of them. All right, now I need two numbers that multiply to 6 and add to -5. So going through factors of 6, I get -2 and -3. So this is now factorized fully. All right, thank you so much for tuning into this video. This has been the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Have a great day.